Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor is my name. That is your co-host. His name is Phil.
Hello.
Wow, 2-syllable Phil. That's how you know it's going to be a good one. UFC 309 is what's on the docket. And I say it's going to be a good one. Perhaps I spoke too soon. I think it will be an interesting episode. There are interesting fights and fighters and ideas to discuss here pertaining to UFC 309. It is not what I would call a good pay-per-view.
It does have people that you know in it.
It certainly does. One of the people I know best.
Yeah. It's got fighters that people have heard of. Mm-hmm. And under that metric, and in the, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul era, that may be something that can actually sell. Mm-hmm. Jon Jones remains one of the few, actual stars that the UFC still has. Partially, I guess, why they've been so keen to put this together. I mean, and it has Oliveira and Chandler, which is going to be meaningless fun.
Yeah, it's somewhat meaningful. I mean, it's not irrelevant fighters, but it doesn't seem like it fulfills any particular function. It will be fun.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
But it is an absolute, two true outcome
it's just
fight, which I cannot imagine will tell us anything about either.
No. It is simply a blood offering.
Yep. And yeah, Bo Nickal, Paul Craig is a potentially hilarious squash match. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not a good pay-per-view, really. I mean, there's nothing that makes you think, man, I have to see this.
Yeah, I think we had a pay-per-view not too long ago, which also felt very much as if it hung on the quality of the main event. I'm trying to remember what it was. Maybe it was O'Malley, Dwalishvili. That was probably it.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
And while that one maybe didn't pan out as a really great main event to watch, it still felt like a very compelling fight to hang a fight card from. This, in one sense, is that compelling, more compelling, because, as you said, I know these guys. Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, these are two of the biggest stars, Jon Jones in particular, but two of the biggest stars of the heavier weight classes of the last decade. Stipe Miocic, one of the most successful heavyweight champions in UFC history. Jon Jones, one of the most successful champions in general in UFC history. And yet, there's so much just shit around this booking, isn't there, that really sours it. Jon Jones does not feel as if he's the heavyweight champion. Rather, it feels like he is a fraud who is holding up the division. All of us would much rather, I'm sure, be seeing Tom Aspinall fighting for defending the belt. Mm-hmm. And instead we get this. Miocic has not fought in 3 years, coming off a loss, by the way. Jon Jones hasn't fought in, I think, almost 2 now, since he beat Cyril Gane. And it was like a 2+ year pause before that. So on the one hand, yes, these are extremely notable fighters, and a fight has a belt on the line. It should be a big, relevant tentpole for this card. But I think the wood is rotten, is the feeling. It's holding up the tent, but I'm starting to see some cracks. I don't know how much I really care about this the way I care about the sort of... It doesn't feel like the living, breathing stuff of MMA, It feels like a fight outside the sport in a weird way.
Well, I mean, it also feels like a heist. It feels like Jon Jones is getting away with it. Because this is a man who has obviously had a very up and down career in many ways, with the various a
lot of uppers, lots of downers.
Yeah, yes. The various drug test failures and the extracurricular activities, the hitting a pregnant woman and the domestic violence, all this other kind of stuff, combined with a sort of steady degradation in his skills and also a sort of notorious position as someone who was, partying when they should have been training.
Yeah.
At the, some of the key moments of their life, like the Alexander Gustafsson fight. And there's been a lot of sort of waiting for him to get his comeuppance. And this has been a very protracted way of Jon Jones saying to everyone, I am not going to get my comeuppance. I'm going to have one final match that I am going to pick against someone who is probably going to look very bad. And then I am going to leave the division forever. There is no moral lesson to be learned from any of this. I will simply leave. I will have a almost numerically perfect record. And, there's been talk of like getting the 12-6 DQ lost retroactively expunged from his record, whatever, man. But you know what I mean? People are particularly pissed off about this one because it is not the feeling of a beloved champion getting one final send off or having one final match, but the idea that like this is a villain making his escape from the sport.
A likely successful escape from the scene of the crime. Yeah. But the thing is Jon Jones, it feels in a way a weird perversion of a normal MMA fighter's career, because already now that this fight is actually on the horizon, because he didn't just come up to heavyweight to like right off he won the belt. You know what I mean? And the organization has been lining up lockstep behind Jon Jones to continue pushing him, against a great deal of resistance actually, as like the certified number one greatest of all time. Clearly he's better than Ilia Topuria, et cetera, Volkanovski, Holloway, all these guys. But there's this weird perversion of what usually happens at the end of an MMA fighter's career because of what Jones is sitting on. Because he's already talking about, after beating Miocic, maybe I'll fight, what was it he said? At one point, Pereira, that's right.
BMF title.
That's right. He also talked about, which by the way, I don't think he's going to relinquish the heavyweight belt like that. I think he would say, actually, Pereira, come up and fight me for the heavyweight title. And also the BMF title. A new one, I guess. Because doesn't Ilia Topuria technically the BMF champion right now? Or was that not on the line?
I mean, there's several lineal BMF champions, right?
There's no real lineage for that fake belt, is there?
Because who was it Kamaru Usman who immediately knocked out Jorge Masvidal after he beat Nate Diaz?
Oh yeah.
So Leon
Edwards,
Usman, and then
Leon
I
Edwards.
guess Leon Edwards was the lineal BMF.
And now
Bilal Muhammad. Amazing.
Bilal Muhammad is the lineal BMF champ.
Oh, that's the best person to have it.
Yes, it is. Wow, it never even crossed my mind. I mean, Leon Edwards is a funny enough BMF champ. But it's this thing where Jon Jones is he's like, this is going to be my last fight. I'm going to fight Miocic. It's okay. I'm holding up the heavyweight division for 2 years just to get this final send off. And now he's already talking about like, I'm going to do another big fight. I'm going to hold up another division. Fighters, we know, do not retire when they say they're going to retire. But the problem is that Jones is sort of in a position of power backed up by the organization of the UFC.
Yep.
They're not trying to take this belt from him. Not in any public way anyway that I can see. Maybe he's been pressured, but it seems to me that they are full-throatedly supporting this. So, it just has an icky feeling about it. Really. Like a new kind of icky feeling. Like Jon Jones's fights often have an icky feeling about them, but, this is a new layer.
Yeah, because it's also it's the feeling of what's the right word for this? It basically, and we're probably going to get like a feel for this in the coming, or at least just in America, people certainly are. It's like it's clientism kind of thing. It's because it's the idea that the UFC and John Jones are suddenly in lockstep in ways which they never were throughout pretty much his entire career.
Right.
Because he is towing the company line, and they desperately want people to forget about Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
And Dana is, visibly, like, shakingly upset about Francis Ngannou whenever he has to talk about him.
Yes.
And, suddenly...
Ngannou's he's his new Fedor. That was Dana's line with Fedor for many years.
That was always, trouble for Dana White, but now, like, his other son has just left town and wants nothing to do with him, and then suddenly John Jones is the remaining one, and suddenly is his favorite, who was the best all along.
Yeah.
That's the extra gross part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I tried to speak over you before. I don't know if you heard me say that Ngannou has really replaced Fedor in Dana's mind. Fedor was sort of the his Moby Dick for many, many years. A guy who just would never play ball in a way that acknowledged Dana White and the UFC's supremacy, and so he was just quaking with fury anytime he had to discuss him and just dragging his name through the mud. Now it's Ngannou.
Yep. The flip side of Dana's hatred for the flyweights is his love for the big boys,
which turns into a much more pointed kind of hatred when they defy
spurn him.
Yeah, spurned by Ngannou. All right, well, let's talk about the actual fight itself. We've discussed all the layers of context shaping our experience of it, but we do have one of the greatest of all time, John Jones, fighting one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, Stipe Miocic. Obviously, we are going to have to discuss the various ways in which they have either materially declined or the ways in which we suspect they may have declined in the intervening years. But what's your surface level take on this matchup?
So, I mean, the obvious first thing to say is that there's no reason to expect either of these guys to look good at all.
Yes.
The last... it's so difficult to take much away from that Cyril Gane fight with John Jones.
Yeah.
But, like, him looking particularly great in it is not something that you can necessarily say so much as that Cyril Gane completely disintegrated.
Yeah. Little to take away from the fight, but the fight did take away my good impression of Cyril Gane.
Yes.
That's pretty much what happened.
On the other hand, one of the main things which has meant that John Jones has been such an incredibly long-lived, successful fighter has been, more than anything else, more than his length or his athleticism, such as it is, or any of those other or this cardio or anything else. The thing which has made John Jones who he is his durability.
Yes.
And that is the one thing which we have never, ever seen a crack in, is that he is someone who can, he is someone who's been able to take big shots and has essentially almost all of the time simply been able to wear his opponents down by still being there at the end of the fight.
Yeah. It's a tremendous...
Not necessarily any like great strategic adjustments made by him in fights. He's simply there and he picks up attritional damage over the course of the fight, and he gets punched and kicked a bunch, and it doesn't damage him that badly. And by the end, he tends to be winning. And So, fights like, regardless of whether you think Reyes won on the cards, which, he probably did against Jones, he definitely lost rounds 4 and 5.
Yes. Pretty much everybody does.
And so I expect Jon Jones, if nothing else, to still come in with the one thing which he kept throughout his career, which is, just ridiculous durability, which sort of immediately puts him up in a matchup of old men, because I am not sure what Stipe Miocic is going to retain. Stipe is more removed from his last fight. He looked really bad in it in almost every way, whether that's physically, strategically. He just got absolutely nothing done. And it is also a matchup where Stipe is in some ways someone who I think is relatively, on the surface level is well suited to fight someone like Jon Jones, in that he's basically just like quite a good boxer, and he has good enough takedown defense that Jones isn't going to be able to take him down, as easily as he did like Cyril Gane. But, Jones's weakness has always been that his hands and his boxing is not particularly strong. But I also find myself thinking that, like, Miocic is just he is a directionally aimless fighter.
Yes.
And this became even more apparent when he fought Ngannou in their last fight, where he's just kind of standing around and waiting.
Yep.
He's not drawing Ngannou onto shots, and he's not like pushing him backwards and trying to put him on his heels so that he can jab him into takedowns. He's just kind of standing there and waiting for exchanges to happen. He's always been somewhat directionally aimless. Again, he's had performances where he's changed that around. A little like Dustin Poirier, sometimes he can find pressure in him, like when he fought JDS the second time.
Yep.
But I don't think it's really his natural self, and his natural self is who he's been, turning into more as he's aged.
Yeah.
So my general thoughts are that we're in for a slog. We're in for a fight where neither man is going to be able to take the other down. I don't think Miocic is going to have either the Reyes or Santos fight plans of drawing Jones onto shots, nor is he going to have the plan of like pressuring Jones and constantly forcing the pocket on him.
Yeah.
That basically no one has ever been able to successfully pull off against Jones since, I guess, Gustafsson. I don't think he's going to do either of those. It's going to be contested in sort of middle range. And in that kind of fight, as always, I kind of have to pick Jon Jones to just be able to win out through attritional damage, and due to the fact that it's impossible to hurt him.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, again, we have to just repeatedly bring up the X factors of ring rust and age and wear and tear here. I will say that Stipe has historically been a pretty resilient heavyweight. Not that he hasn't been knocked out, but that he doesn't tend to fade.
Mm-hmm.
Unless the fight is crazy. And even then, he is often the guy who can outlast opponents. So maybe that's something that if he is not actually receiving a lot of damage, and this is the thing in Jones's recent fights when they go late, what we've really seen is the paring away of Jones's more creative impulses over the years,
mm-hmm.
which was his calling card as a prospect and early on as a champion, right? That he would take the fight everywhere, do any number of crazy techniques. He was inventive and endlessly experimental. And towards about the middle of his title reign, even in the middle to early stages, we definitely saw that being pared away. Jones was trying to turn himself into a, like, perfect round-winning fighter. And I think what we've seen is that has had a deleterious effect on his ability to actually break people in that stage of the fight when he has proven to have outlasted them. Right? I think it used to be the chin and the stamina meant that he was always there and he was winning the late rounds, but he used to be crushing people by that point of the fight. And now, when you look at like the Reyes fight as a great example, you're correct in saying he wins rounds 4 and 5. Is he crushing Dominic Reyes? It's kind of just that Reyes runs out of ideas and steam.
Yeah, Reyes is just really tired.
It's much more a case now where Jones wins simply by being there, not by pressing an advantage once he has worn the opponent out or outlasted their drive. And that makes me think that a slog is very possible. That Jones may not build anything particularly effective against an opponent who is himself not particularly prone to falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Who actually has to be broken. So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I am also inclined to take Jones.
You kind of have to take
right.
Jones,
The range, the kicking game. I mean, Stipe is the same height as Jones on paper. He still does have, everyone has a shorter wingspan, 4 inches less of reach. And he's a big kicker. So you just kind of have to assume he's going to have more options and be getting more done if we're in a directionally neutral kind of slog.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, there's lots of reasons to assume that this could be a different fight if Miocic was younger.
Yeah.
As I said, the Reyes fight is also just an example of John Jones's boxing getting very badly exposed.
Yes.
For those, 2.5 rounds until Reyes gasses out.
Yeah.
And, Miocic is a better boxer than Dominic Reyes. But it's just the fact that he looked so bad in his last fight, and it was so long ago that there is no reason you can assume that he's not going to be anything other than an utter shell of himself.
I mean, he even, just to speak to how bad he looked, he was even at moments getting out-wrestled by Ngannou.
Mm-hmm.
It is quite possible that Jones could effectively, he certainly had wrestling on the brain when he fought Cyril Gane, more than he has in almost any fights for the previous 5 years. He wanted to wrestle Cyril Gane. And if he comes into this fight with a similar idea that he's going to be kind of aggressive and just force like a body lock and whip Miocic to the ground, that might work, especially if he catches Miocic cold. And I suspect Miocic will have a longer cold phase than normal, having been out of the ring for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And seeming to be completely disinterested in fighting. I strongly suspect Stipe Miocic no longer has a passion for fighting. He is taking this because it's a big opportunity and he's going to get paid a lot. And who wouldn't want to fight John Jones? But it's hard for me to imagine that we're going to be seeing a strongly motivated Miocic coming in here, given that he has been totally inactive and out of the public eye for 3 years now.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully he is motivated, because it's John Jones and it's such a big
it's something,
legacy fight, and because he's so obviously been picked as a soft touch, that it will light a fire onto him. That Jones is so clearly going, no, I don't want to fight Tom Aspinall. I would like to fight you, old man.
Yes. But it's actually it's because Miocic is the best. I think you've misinterpreted that, actually. He wants to fight Miocic because Miocic is the best, Phil.
Yes. And again, this is another one of the things which makes this fight particularly kind of lame, is that it would be fine for John Jones to fight Stipe Miocic. It just didn't need to sit on the belt.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
No, in no one's mind is Stipe Miocic a heavyweight title challenger at this point in time.
I'm more than happy to see Jones Miocic.
Mm-hmm.
You could have it as a main event and just not have the belt. It just shouldn't be holding up the division. We have a potentially generationally great heavyweight sitting on an interim championship while the champion is fighting somebody else. That's the thing. That's what's wrong with it.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, as you said, there's just too many X factors to consider. Like, what if, I mean, because again, the Garn fight is proof that Jones could at least bring himself to have like a surface level game plan of like, I need to wrestle this guy.
Yep.
Which is, to be honest, much more than what I was expecting from him.
I would say his game plan was twofold: pressure and wrestle.
Yeah.
He spent that entire fight, as short as it was, he was in Cyril Gane's grill. That was his plan.
Yep. But yeah, it was much more positive than I would have expected from him, given pretty much everything we'd seen from him for the last
totally agree. Yeah.
4 years. But again, and it's now been a really long time, and he's gotten injured in the interim.
Yeah.
That it's entirely possible that the Jones physicality and durability just disappeared during that time. Well, it might happen that he gets into some ugly boxing exchange like he did with Reyes, and then Stipe just sleeps him.
I mean, I do want to talk about that. Just before we get into that idea, I will say that put a point on the fact that the reason we say it was much more an exposing of Cyril Gane than necessarily a triumph of Jon Jones is this feeling that, yeah, you have to give Jones credit for coming in with a game plan and for not just doing the same old that he'd been doing in the last years of his title reign. But you also really have to question how effective or how deep that game plan would have proven to be if Cyril Gane had not turned out to be sort of a perfect subject for Jones's, that version of Jones to work against. Like, that's what we really took away from that fight is, Cyril Gane's wrestling has not really been tested until he fought Jon Jones. If Cyril Gane had proven to be able to to thwart those early takedown attempts, how might that fight have looked? We don't know. We have no idea what next stages there might have even been to Jones's game plan. No clue. But back to the point of Miocic being a massive puncher, was there not a time in the not too distant past when you would have been strongly tempted to pick Miocic over Jones had they fought in their respective primes? Isn't Miocic, because I know, Phil, that you would have been tempted to pick Rumble if Anthony Johnson ever fought Jones. Which on the one hand feels kind of funny seeing what Daniel Cormier did to Rumble. On the other hand, I think there's some very real, knowing that Jones is so reliant on his chin and his durability, what happens? A big question has always been, what happens when he runs into somebody who actually just hits like a truck?
Yeah, I mean, the ironic thing about like Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones is that, like, obviously Daniel Cormier is actually in many ways a better fighter than Jon Jones. Like, he has a better matchup spread against like a lot of the historical light heavyweights. Yeah. Like he would, I would generally have questions about Jon Jones, even in his prime against Alex Pereira, or
he would have wrestled him, but
like it's not. I don't know if it's even that easy to like. I don't know. It's not Cyril Gane easy.
Yeah. He would have had to walk through some serious hell to get there.
But Cormier would have wrestled him, and he would have wrestled him much more easily.
Yes.
The same thing with like Jan Blachowicz. Like, Jon Jones probably just wouldn't have actually matched up very well with Jan Blachowicz at all.
That's a very interesting point.
But Daniel Cormier would have absolutely thrashed him.
Totally. Yeah, I kind of agree.
But yeah, so the matchup between Stipe is one where, like, as compared to someone like Rumble, is one where I don't think Stipe fits in some of the stylistic boxes, because Rumble is a stylistically almost perfect matchup for Jones, I think.
Right. It's the aggression.
And sort of, but also just like a mentally perfect matchup in that, in the bad way. Because it's a real, like...
He's just waiting for you to convince him that he's going to lose.
Exactly. It is an absolutely classic Elkins versus Johnson fight.
Yeah, yes.
Where absolutely know that Rumble would beat the shit out of him for like 1 or 2 rounds. And to be honest, might have put severe cracks into the famous Jones durability.
Absolutely.
But then you also know that like once it got late, that Rumble would just absolutely shit his pants.
Yeah, he would... Deteriorate is not even the word. It's not a violent enough word for the downfall that would have happened to him. So Miocic, in one sense,
Stipe, I think, in terms of his ability to like pressure effectively and low kick and those kind of things, is not as perfect as Rumble. I think.
Yeah.
A matchup for Jones. But he would also be as I said, he's, much more directionally aimless, all this other kind of stuff. But he's also, as you said, actually mentally and physically durable.
Yeah, he's got staying power.
So I would probably still end up picking Jones just for the ability to rack up attritional damage and because I don't trust Miocic to game plan for opponents, even in his prime.
That's the thing, right? What the matchup that all of this context suggests is one in which Miocic could have won convincingly if he had a really good game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason that you can't pick him, because you can't trust Miocic to have a good game plan. But I do wonder to what extent we are still in that place where if Miocic happens to come in super great physical condition with a really good game plan that he's capable of sticking to, and it probably would involve pressure and aggressively moving into the pocket, he still could beat.
Although,
Jones.
as I said, we have sort of noticed with John Jones, the Reyes and Santos fights are performances where he's being pulled forward and he's actually really bad at it.
Yes.
I think he's fine, like, he's fine in neutral space, and he's actually, like, increasingly, like, quite okay on the back foot.
That is, I think, still his best ever striking performance is the rematch with Daniel Cormier.
Yeah.
And that really also, is a clinic of Jones.
His rematch with Gustafsson.
Yeah. Those are clinics of Jones the outsider. Just maintaining.
So yeah, I'm not sure whether it's. I'm not actually as convinced as I used to be as to whether like pure pressure is the answer for John Jones. But
what else is Miocic going to do? He has to pressure him, right?
But yeah, it is just the fact that I just, especially after that Ngannou fight, I just expect, and the second Cormier fight, I just expect Stipe to just kind of hang around and wait for the direction of the fight to be dictated to him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean the third Cormier fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is such a massive indictment of Miocic too. The like the body shot question against Daniel Cormier.
Yeah.
The power of this man to forget a good idea is unparalleled. He is like, for something obvious not to occur to him, and then it occurs to him and it suddenly works, and then he forgets about it for like the exact same duration in the next fight is astounding.
Yep.
How did you not build on your success in any way? What is fighting to you? What are you thinking about in your preparation that is even a possibility?
Yeah. And it was also every single time Daniel Cormier got hit in the body in any one of his previous fights,
yes.
Be it Anderson Silva or Frank Mir or anything like that, he would just get hit and would react like the Pillsbury Doughboy. And then they didn't even have this as a plan in camp. It was something that Stipe found halfway through their second fight.
Yeah.
And then forgot about forever.
That's the thing. You almost want to give him credit for finding it. You're like, wow, he's smarter than his team. They forgot to notice this weakness, but Miocic picked up on it and then he forgot it again. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. So yeah, I mean, I think if Jones looks bad, which is very possible at this point in his career, he has not been seriously tested, in some time, even in a sense, including like the Reyes fight, where it's like, this is a test Jones can pass accidentally and to some extent just by surviving. It's possible he comes in looking bad. It's possible Miocic has a really aggressive game plan and his only intention in the fight is to test John Jones's chin and to get in his face and hit him. And it is possible that works. There is a reason I still think that John Jones, there's a reason he's taking this fight. There's a reason he took Cyril Gane instead of Ngannou. There's a reason he took so fucking long to come a heavyweight in the first place. There is still a little brother mentality in John Jones.
Yep.
Where he does not want to get bullied by a bigger, stronger man. He never wants to feel that his opponent is bigger and stronger than him. I think he's afraid of that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think there is a version of this fight where Miocic could really shock him. And, but I am absolutely not going to pick that to happen.
No, you cannot expect Stipe to look anything other than dreadful. Like,
yeah.
Extremely shot.
Like, I would not be surprised if this fight went down very much like the Gane fight, where like, even though Miocic should be able to actually compete with Jones's wrestling better than almost any other heavyweight available, even today, he may not. He just might not show up. It might not be ready when the fight starts, and Jones might just take him down and submit him. Like, it's possible. Yeah.
I mean, there's just, it's a brutal sport. When you get old, you can suddenly start losing very badly to many people that you might have otherwise been either able to beat or at least be competitive with.
Look at Neil Magny.
Yep.
You might start losing even when the fights start out in exactly the way of all the ones you've won in the past. You might still lose those fights.
Yeah. So there's well within the realms of possibility that Stipe suddenly looks, shouldn't be in the UFC levels of washed. I hope that he doesn't. I hope that he comes out looking refreshed from his long break.
Yeah.
I hope that he's boxing well, he's moving, he's low kicking, he's doing, he's keeping the pace up, he's doing everything that he wasn't in that Ngannou
combinations.
Rematch.
I hope he's got a rising left hook because Jones loves to take his eyes off the opponent and duck down to the right.
Mm-hmm.
God, I hope he rips his head off with a left hook. Come on, Stipe. But no, it's not going to happen.
It is not going to happen. But I still think the most likely outcome is just somewhere between a slog and a sparring match where Jones just creeps ahead more and more as the fight goes on. But I would love to be wrong.
I think top two likeliest outcomes are that and Jones crushes Miocic.
Yep.
Comes out really motivated to make a statement, and he knows why he asked for this matchup. He expects to crush Miocic, and he might just come out and put the boot on his neck right away.
Yep. Sadly, I have to agree.
That is your main event of UFC 309. Like I said, it's certainly interesting. There's lots to talk about, and doubtless there will be lots to talk about next week, but it feels a little unclean. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the co-main event of this card, a rematch, an offering to the gods of blood and violence, and the sacrificant. What's the word for an object of a sacrifice? Sacrificant?
Sacrificial?
Sacrificant.
Oh, maybe it is.
The sacrificant will be either Charles Oliveira or Michael Chandler. Smooth ending to this segment. Let's take a goddamn break, and I'll come back with my brain functioning after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Our co-main event here, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, for the, remember this one, Wasn't It Cool belt?
Mm-hmm.
You guys like this, right? Look, I don't have a problem with this fight. I like this fight. I liked it the first time. It does feel like, I don't know, it's strange, isn't it? It feels like 2 years ago, we were right smack in the sort of MMA's lightweight 4 kings era.
Mm-hmm.
5 kings, perhaps. That we were at the tail end of it, maybe 2 years ago, where we had Poirier and Chandler and Oliveira. Eddie Alvarez was sort of there for the early stage of that as a very real player. And there's another one that I'm forgetting. Justin Gaethje. And now it's just, I don't know, what is it since like Gaethje Poirier 2, which was a phenomenal fight. It's no more than 2 years. And yet, weirdly, it feels that we've come a very far way in that time. Because Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler does not feel to me like, oh yes, of course this is happening. It's the 5 kings of lightweight. They should all fight each other. It sort of just feels like, I know I'm going to like it. I like both these fighters. They're fun to watch. What is it doing? Unclear. It's just sort of happening for fun.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is as meaningless fun as you could possibly get, basically, at this weight class.
Right. As much for both of those polls, right? It's the peak of meaninglessness, but also the peak of fun. Again, we're not saying it's a bad fight. We love it, but it's just there awesome. to be what it is.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be incredibly predictable.
Yeah.
In the way it plays out, if not the actual outcome.
Yes.
Which is one of these things, because it's obviously, and as we said before, when we previewed this fight, this is one where it is incredibly possible, as it always is when Charles Oliveira fights anyone who can crack, that he just gets absolutely melted.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get absolutely melted, then Michael Chandler is, even more so than he was in his earlier career, going to gas out and die.
Yeah.
Michael Chandler has increasingly become someone who will take a good, smart, effective game plan and then will execute it so nose-bleedingly, teeth-grittingly hard.
Yeah, vein-burstingly.
That he absolutely cannot maintain it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And will completely implode down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a parallel for that. Like, that these are good ideas, but the execution is too insane. It's too committed to those good ideas. Like, how can you be that well prepared and also be so short-sighted? That's sort of the Michael Chandler, the book on Michael Chandler.
I mean, it's because the book is a self-help book.
It's a picture book.
It's a book that tells you need to give 110%.
Right.
And he's like, takes it absolutely, literally.
100%, yes. Yeah, Michael Chandler.
110%.
110%, yes, sorry.
More than is possible to give. If you are not doing that, you are not giving enough.
Damn it. I've just outed myself as too much of a pussy to live the Michael Chandler grind style, which is what people in Michael Chandler's world call a lifestyle, because life is a grind.
Yeah.
As you know.
So, I mean, again, as last time, it's almost a 50-50 proposition, because, I mean, again looking at that last fight,
yep,
Michael Chandler had like a really good idea, had really good ideas.
Absolutely.
He attacked Oliveira with the guillotine when he was taken down himself, which has historically been something which has actually worked quite well against Charles Oliveira when he's overcommitted on being the grappler. He threw body head combinations. He pressured.
And he fucking rocked Charles Oliveira with the pressure and the combinations.
Yeah, he badly hurt Charles Oliveira, and then he got to the second round and he died.
Yeah.
Which is to say that it is absolutely a chance that, because Charles Oliveira isn't going to come out and he's going to be like, oh yeah, I've figured out what Michael Chandler's doing this time. I just need to, I'm going to use my masterful defense to stop him from hitting me. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe it will.
No, it won't.
But, the main thing is simply if he doesn't get finished in the first round, he's almost certainly going to finish Michael Chandler. I'm really tempted to pick Michael Chandler just as just as a variance pick. Just as this is probably going to happen something close to 50% of the time on this fight, and they're fighting twice.
Yeah.
So I should just change my pick.
Yeah. Worth pointing out on that note that it has been a full 2 years. In fact, as of today, not the day that you're listening to this, but the day that we're recording, it has been 2 years since Michael Chandler's last fight. Not really much shorter than the kind of declining period we were talking about for the likes of Jones and Miocic.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we don't really know what to expect from Chandler. It is sort of easy to assume, though, based on what he was looking like across the many years preceding this layoff, that he's going to be the same. You know, I think Chandler is that kind of athlete too, where you just don't expect him to decline as dramatically, even though he is 38 years old now.
He is, if anything, he is the Tom Cruise of,
yes,
not just the lightweight division, but the UFC as a whole.
Yeah.
He is simply going to try and grind set and motivational speak his way through age.
Yeah. And like Tom Cruise, he is jumping up on the couch, not because he's so excited, but because he's trying to look over the counter. He's like Tom Cruise in every way, including the fact that they're both 5'2".
But yeah, exactly the same kind of guy who's gonna, Tom Cruise has not matured into deeper, more adult roles.
Definitely
as
not.
He's gotten older. Instead, he's just been see, I'm still as badass as I always was. In fact, he's gone completely the opposite direction. He's kind of leaned into just proving how, masculine and the age will never catch me.
Right. Never mind the fact that my face
Michael
looks kind of weird and puffy now. Never mind that. Yeah, he's not had like a George Clooney late career, has he? Where he's like, I'm going to play silly roles. I'm going to play small dramatic roles. I'm going to flex.
Yeah.
But I do basically I don't really even know what the point of all that was, except to say that I do expect Michael Chandler to still be, an explosive little fire plug like he has been for the last, entirety of his career.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, it wasn't always the case in his Bellator career. Sometimes he just took people down and ground on them.
Sure.
But I think in the UFC, he's both made the calculation that he doesn't actually have the gas tank for that anymore.
Yeah.
And he's made the he was always, even when he was with Bellator, he was the company man for Bellator, but he's also decided that he would be a company man for the UFC, which has meant that he wants to be the show for them. And all due credit to him, he really has been.
Mm-hmm.
Say what else you will about Michael Chandler, he has been just consistently thrilling in his time in the UFC.
No doubt.
And he has given it his all to its own detriment.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what more is there to say about this fight, really? I mean, maybe it could be a fight where Chandler comes in and tries to just out-wrestle Oliveira. I mean, as soon as you say that, I think that's maybe not a terrible strategy. I think you're right that the calculation for Chandler is not just that he wants to be the king of entertaining fights, but also that he probably doesn't feel that he's cut out to spend all of his energy trying to control somebody on the ground for 3 rounds. Is this 3 rounds? Thank God I said something.
That's a good point. But anyway,
5 rounds. 5 rounds.
Oh, wow.
Glad I thought of it. It is a 5-round co-main event.
Imagine if this goes 5 rounds. That's got to be the most unlikely outcome, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. How does both of these guys survive for 20 plus minutes against each other?
I'll be fairly surprised if it goes 3.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think we kind of saw the whole story that this matchup has to offer in their first fight.
Yep. I think I'm still going to pick Oliveira. I can't change the direction I think the coin flip is weighted in, which is very slightly in his direction, because I think it is mostly a 2 true outcome fight. But A, I've seen Oliveira survive a bunch of bad first rounds.
Yep.
More recently, and B, it's not quite a 2 true outcome fight because he can also knock Michael Chandler out instantly.
Right. That's true. That early phase is just as dangerous for Chandler as it is for Oliveira.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas the later rounds are considerably more dangerous for Chandler than they are for Oliveira.
So yeah, I saw someone else saying, Chandler's going to win this fight and make it look easy. And I was like, that is much like the
totally possible
Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah, totally possible.
Take. If he is going to win this fight, he sort of has to make it look easy.
Yep, he'd better.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I think Chandler's going to be super aggressive. I think he is going to force exchanges on Oliveira. I think he's going to knock Oliveira down.
Uh-huh.
And I think probably the effort he will expend trying to turn that into an actual finish is going to set him up to be beaten up later as the fight goes on. It would be interesting though if Chandler did come in with a different approach, like being a strong, bricked up wrestler who's willing to like park in Oliveira's guard. I mean, he showed some of that in their first fight. It was after a knockdown. And he went completely apeshit and showed no interest in actually controlling the position. He just wanted to finish, but he did show that he can be effective just getting on top of Charles Oliveira and hammering him. And I think that's a totally viable way to fight Charles. I think you're going to see the bulk of threats that he poses off of his back within that first round or within the first 2. And as long as you can account for those and just kind of keep his shoulders in front of your shoulders and not let him move his hips, you can do what, why am I blanking on the name of guy who did that to Charles Oliveira?
Arman Tsarukyan?
Tsarukyan, but also before Tsarukyan. Paul Felder, of course.
Yeah.
The classic example of what happens if somebody just accepts Oliveira's grappling gambit. But I don't expect it to happen. I think Chandler's has become the guy he's going to be for the rest of his career for the most part until he really starts to drop off. Then we'll probably see a further attempt to transform.
Yeah, and I don't trust him. When was the last time that he committed to some kind of controlled wrestling performance? Right. Was it Brent Primus?
Probably.
I think that's 2018, 6 years ago.
It hasn't been the entirety of his UFC career. He has not been that guy. So
I'd be interested to see him try.
Yeah.
But yeah, nowadays he would probably he would try too hard at it.
Exactly.
What was the insane thing he did against Dustin Poirier? Because again, like, he had a vaguely decent idea of, like,
you mean when he picked him up with like a high crotch lift and then got his back taken?
Yeah, it was like he had like a good idea of, basically wrestling Dustin Poirier, and then he's got like 30 seconds left in the round, and he just like, either high crotch lifted him or like suplexed him or something. And it's like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? You're winning this round. Why are you just setting fire to your energy reserves?
Maybe you're also thinking of the thing where he took Justin Gaethje down and caused him to land entirely on Michael Chandler's own head.
That too. But I think it was the Poirier one where he just did some incredible, like, high octane takedown with like the 30 seconds left in the round that he was probably winning.
Completely unnecessary.
But why?
Yeah, completely unnecessary. You're allowing the position to change, you're creating chances, and you're burning energy that you do not need to burn, that you will not get back.
So yeah, even if he does try and wrestle Charles Oliveira, it's just he won't be able to stop him from trying to like spinning pile driver him.
I think you're totally right. He's too much of an action hero to just win the fight.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna have to. He will not be able to stop himself from giving Oliveira chances.
Yep.
Giving him counterplay, as we say in the chess world, Phil.
Yep.
All right. Both of us going with the Oliveira pick. It does feel very precarious. As you said, that first fight very nearly did not go Oliveira's way, and it will probably very nearly not go his way even if he wins the rematch.
Yep.
So Chandler has a very good chance of, as that Twitter user said, of making it look easy. Could happen. Totally.
It's his best path to victory.
Absolutely. All right, let's take another break then with that one out of the way. We're going to pick up some of the scraps of this undercard. Chris Weidman is fighting. We hate ourselves and life, so we are going to talk about that. And maybe some other ones here, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Carlos Prates and his win over a version of Neil Magny, who was a sort of like he tried to have a good fight. And ultimately taught us that maybe Neil Magny just can't actually have good fights anymore. Maybe we'll talk about that and the rest after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Phil has reminded me that I almost forgot to discuss his favorite fighter, family man, possessor of the American dream, Bo Nickal.
A possessor of something more valuable than that. Possessor of the Heavy Hands 2023
That's
Spike
right.
Carlisle Bad Vibes of the Year.
Truly one of our most controversial handies picks ever.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at least if you leave out like the ones that we don't even care about, like Fight of the Year, those are probably contentious every year.
Mm-hmm.
Fighter of the Year, etc. But for our actual specialty awards, I don't think we've ever made a pick for one that prompted more people to argue with us in the YouTube comments.
We just hate gingers.
Yeah. Well, actually, the real thing is that we revealed ourselves as soy boy cucks because we...
What?
Well, because why would we get a bad vibe from Bo Nickal? He's like white picket fence, Mr. Manifest Destiny. So like for us to be sussed out by him says something bad about us. Cause he's actually like he's innocent and pure That's how his supporters see him anyway. They don't understand at all why we would get a bad vibe from him.
I did notice that, like, he's been being a lot more complimentary of, like, Hamzat laylately. I saw, like, a video of him where he was like, Hamzat, he's really good at grappling. And I was like, I don't remember you saying this before. I remember you saying stuff about how Hamzat was just like a giant piece of shit. Anyone who thought he was a good grappler was just talking out of their arse. I would completely handle him. He's a joke. But it seems weirdly, now that he's in your division, you seem a lot more respectful of him.
I don't even remember that. This is the thing with the vibe pick. This is not a scientific designation, people. And if you're confounded by me saying that that Bo Nickal gives me a Spike Carlisle style bad vibe, I cannot explain it to your satisfaction. There is no way for me to communicate to you what a vibe check is. Right? You have your own vibe checks. Everybody checks people's vibes and gets a read on other people. That is difficult to explain. It's intuitive. So I can't explain to you, like, factually, I didn't know Bo Nickal was talking shit and then turned tail and changed his tune about Hamzat. That has nothing to do with it. It is purely that he gives me a bad vibe. I just don't like him. That's it. I just don't like him. If I met him at the supermarket, I would try to leave the conversation as quickly and politely as possible. But anyway, Phil loves him, so we're going to talk about him. Bo Nickal, Paul Craig, one of your main card mainstay matchups for this event. And well, let's hear it.
Boy.
Let's hear it, Phil.
I mean, okay, so this is basically, a lot of people have, I remembered seeing one of those threads on Twitter at some point where people like, if you could guarantee the outcome of one fight this year, what would it be? And loads of people were going for the obvious ones. They were like, I would like Max to beat Topuria. Mm-hmm. Or I would like Miocic to beat John Jones. And they were going for like these obvious sort of moral picks of like fan favorites.
Sure.
To have, sudden resurgences and, all this other kind of stuff. Very understandable. And I was like, come on, man, Paul Craig over and Bo Nickal. He's funny as hell.
Why is nobody else talking about this fight? Yeah. Which maybe the fact that you were frustrated that no one was talking about it does say that it perhaps does not deserve to be one of the primary matchups of this entire card. Cause
yeah,
nobody cares. But I'm with you.
But there is one way in which it could be funny,
Absolutely.
Which is that, Bo Nickal is obviously, this is being set up as a squash match. Someone, Bo Nickal up against a badly struggling Paul Craig, who has made the disastrous mistake of going down to middleweight, where the fighters are actually, I don't want to say good, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he suddenly realized that he's just actually like really bad at striking, and he can't actually wrestle, and that he's extremely slow, and so he's now lost 4 out of his last 5. That this is being set up as a squash match. But this is also the Bo Nickal that needed to be, like, coached through a submission by his corner against, who was it?
Was it against Brundage?
It might have been. But, like, they basically had to, like, step by step talk him through how to do an arm triangle.
It was the Jamie Pickett fight.
Jamie Pickett fight, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is at least also part of Bo Nickal's sudden like change of heart on certain elite fighters, is that he's realizing that like some elements of MMA are actually a lot harder than he thought they were.
Yeah, it was the Kamzat hate was just a Dunning-Kruger. He's like, this guy's a pussy. And now that he's learned to grapple, he's like, actually, he's kind of good.
Yes.
This shit is hard.
So there is a small chance that we can all hope for that Paul Craig will do his wonderful thing in getting smoked for 2 rounds.
Yes.
And then just, like Magomed Ankalaev before him, both somehow beating Bo Nickal and also ruining his entire career forever.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be 2 rounds. He could get smoked for any period of time and have the inexperienced, overambitious Nickal walk himself into a submission. That is the thing with Nickal's inexperience. It does bring him closer to the baseline of middleweightness that allowed, or light heavyweightness that allowed Paul Craig to thrive in that division.
Mm-hmm.
Because light heavyweight is essentially a division entirely populated by blue chip prospects who remain blue chip prospects for their entire careers.
Yep.
They are at all times poised for a prospect submission loss, which is why guys like Paul Craig, and he's not the only one, always have a place in that division.
Yep.
And at the very least, middleweight is the division where you can be good at one thing and be a successful ranked fighter. Paul Craig is not even really particularly good at his one thing. Like, he has no ways to get there other than getting thrashed. That's his problem. He has no ways to get to his A game that don't start with him losing the fight. But because Bo Nickal is so raw, it is possible, very possible, that Paul Craig's exact game could work in exactly the way it did at light heavyweight.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, it's also going to be the fact that, like, Paul Craig is going to look like Bo Nickal hasn't been fighting people who are very good, but he has been fighting like relatively nimble welterweights, and Paul Craig's going to look like he's underwater when he's fighting him.
Absolutely, yes.
And there's a strong chance that Nickal just torches him on the feet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even then, Paul Craig is, if nothing else, a very mentally tough man, and if Bo Nickal may not be ready to have the experience where he's just like been beating someone up for 7 minutes and they just keep coming after him.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Craig has a superpower in that I think Paul Craig is the only kind of fighter who might actually experience a sense of relief when he is knocked down and his opponent is trying to finish him.
Yeah.
Because he has suddenly, unlike any other point in the fight, he has no doubt of what he's trying to do. He's not guessing. He knows exactly what he's looking for. And yes, it hurts and it sucks and I'm being beaten up. But suddenly he is not in this horrible morass, which he's usually stuck in, of how do I guide the fight into my wheelhouse?
Yep.
It's in his wheelhouse. Him getting beaten up on the ground, that's his wheelhouse. That's where he gets his wins. So yeah, I am honestly almost tempted to pick Paul Craig. Mostly because it would be very funny, but also because I think it's a very real possibility that Bo Nickal gets his ass armbarred or something.
I'm so hoping for it.
I'm going to pick Paul Craig. I don't think he's going to win.
No.
But I do see that path, and it is a path that Paul Craig has taken to victory on many occasions. Many.
I mean, the other thing is that as I said, like, he's lost 4 out of his 5.
Yeah.
By finish. I think Paul Craig is looking on the Neil Magny side of going to lose matchups that he should win.
Oh yeah, but all I need here is for Bo Nickal to be Mike Malott.
Yep,
that's all I need. Neil Magny is where Neil Magny is. He got fucking thrashed by Mike Malott for 2 full rounds. But because he is still somewhere deep in there, he's still Neil Magny. If his opponent is going to lay it on a platter, he will still snap it off.
Yep.
That's all I need. I just need Bo Nickal to win too much.
There were no, like, I didn't pick any of the cool, like, beloved fighters in that Twitter thing where
right.
I was like, no, this would be the funniest outcome.
Yep. Well, I'm going to pick Paul Craig in an effort to will that into existence, but I think very obviously the smart pick would be Bo Nickal.
Yeah, he's going to be at least like, what, minus 500 or whatever.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, since I'm in too good of a mood now, imagining that, let's talk about Chris Weidman.
I mean, just another, this is just one for the glue factory, right?
Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. I mean, I am honestly impressed at the number of thoroughly dispiriting matchups they have actually managed to cook up for Chris Weidman in the modern middleweight division. Each time I'm like, they've run out of guys where I can be confident that this guy is going to mercifully end Chris Weidman quickly. And they have such a deep bench of dudes where I'm like, yes, Chris Weidman's going to lose. And I look at his opponent and I'm like, you're not going to make it look easy. Somehow, you're not going to make it look as easy as it should. And I think Eric Anders is in that company. Like, he is going to win. Absolutely no doubt about that in my mind. Chris Weidman is never going to win a fight again.
Chris Weidman is coming off a win.
Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ.
A win that people weren't sure he was going to get.
Yeah.
But a win nonetheless.
A win that I fully recorded in my brain as a loss.
Yep. There was the thing where he, thought he'd finished Bruno Silva and he was, celebrating and so on, and then it turned out that he just jammed his fingers straight in Bruno Silva's eye or something.
Yep.
And then I think they felt sorry for him because he was so happy after the celebration.
Yep.
That they changed it to a technical decision rather than just, an NC.
Somehow it became a technical decision win, even though it was a fight that was ended by a foul.
Yep. They were like, oh man, just look at him. It's like a kid who's got given a puppy for Christmas. Yeah. You can't take that away from him.
That's a rule, by the way, that I really think should be examined and reconsidered for MMA. The whole, if a foul is deemed accidental and the fight has passed a certain point, then you will go to a decision.
Yep.
This makes sense in boxing where on any level of significance, you are fighting at least 6 rounds. Usually 8 or 10 or 12. You have a lot of variance, baseline variance, one round to the next for that decision to sort of accurately reflect the fight up to that point. In a 3-round MMA fight, it's like, so we're talking, you're in technical decision in case of an accidental foul territory after 1.5 rounds. That is the halfway point of the fight at which you should be able to render a technical decision. I don't think fights are long enough for that to be a possibility. I think foul should just be no contest. If that's what ends the fight, no contest.
I think this gives people a cool opportunity to be up in rounds and then just blind their opponent though.
Yeah, and be like, oops, as long as you say oops.
Sorry guys.
As long as you say oops, you have to go around to all the judges and the referees and say, oops, sorry. And they are obligated to give you a decision win.
Just start, because you can't get penalized for them in any other sense.
Yeah.
Just start swinging the most crippling kicks you can towards your opponent's groin.
Yeah. Tiger claw attack at the face. Just ripping and slashing with talons. Anything to stop the fight because I know I've won 2 rounds.
Tiger style.
Yeah.
It would be amazing to see someone like that be like, right, you're up 2 rounds to 1.
End this shit.
You know what to do.
They just come out spitting and gouging and so yeah, I totally forgot that was a win for Chris Weidman. I'm still of the opinion that Weidman is never going to win a fight again.
Oh yeah.
I'm also of the opinion that Eric Anders is significantly better than modern day Bruno Silva.
Yep.
Bruno Silva was never much, but he was thoroughly figured out in the UFC and lost what understanding of his own game that he once had in that process. Eric Anders really has only gotten better over the course of his UFC career, more consistent, more solid, more technical. So he is absolutely going to beat Chris Weidman.
Also, he can throw low kicks.
He can low kick.
Which is a both cruel and effective thing to do to Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
Also, I apologize to anyone listening if they can hear my cat purring. He's currently trying to attack my arm.
I cannot hear him, and nor do I think you should ever apologize to anyone for the sound of a cat purring.
Okay. Just in case anyone can hear some kind of
Look.
Yes, periodic buzzing sound.
If you were out there in the audience and up until Phil's apology, if you were hearing the cat purring and you were getting annoyed by it, I don't want you listening to the show. Get the fuck out of here. I don't need your support, all right, pal? We like purring cats on this podcast. All right, do you want to talk very briefly then about Prates versus Magny? Last week we had just a soul-destroying Apex card. And the main event was really the only interesting part of it. Although I will say, we are going to have to revisit Rainier de Ridder versus Gerald Meerschaert, probably for a Depressed Us, and we will quite possibly be talking about that fight, or at least one of those men, at this year's Handies, because that was a really goofy, sloppy fight. But
yeah,
the only really meaningful one was the main event, Prates versus Magny. And we talked about Neil Magny. I mean, shit, we've already talked about him earlier this episode as like he really is telling the story of like how the stages of a fighter's decline, what it looks like.
Yep.
Because we had the book on Neil Magny for so long. He beat fighters he shouldn't have beaten because of sort of how it felt for them to fight him. We always knew that if the fight was funneled into a certain kind of arena, that Neil Magny was likely to win. And we also knew very clearly what kind of fighters and what specific techniques would work tremendously well against him. And in that Michael Morales fight, we were forced to reckon with the fact that Neil Magny is now going to lose fights that he would have won previously. And I think that has been reinforced by this, which I thought was actually a very good performance from Neil Magny, as long as it lasted, considerably better than what he did against Morales. I thought he had a very clear idea of the kind of fight he wanted to impose. And he was a much more imposing Neil Magny than he has been in years. And it did not make one jot of difference.
Yeah, I think this was one of those ones where I thought it was a good performance from the losing fighter, and conversely, like a bad performance from the winning fighter.
Yeah, up to a point, it seemed very aimless and too relaxed.
I think it exposed two things about Prates, which, firstly, I think is something that you can see in is like a technical flaw. You can see it in his earlier fights, that he's not really all that in the clinch. He's someone who's basically going to throw double collar tie knees at someone if he just thinks he can get them out of there. But other than that, shit. he's Jose Aldo levels of passive.
Yeah. For similar reasons too. I mean, very much like Jose Aldo, he was entirely committed to wrist control. Mm-hmm. And it did stop Magny from progressing on him. It certainly shut down the like wrestling chain, but it did not lead to any escape routes or any offense for Prates.
No.
Same as it does for Aldo himself.
Yep. And to be honest, this didn't actually, and the other thing was that he looked like he had no idea of who Neil Magny is as an opponent. Yeah. Because he was letting that happen a lot, and he wasn't low kicking him.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so your thing was just to like, do the absolute worst way of fighting Neil Magny, which is to just clinch up with him and wait for him to get tired of clinching up with you. And as it turned out, he just nuked him on the break in, much the same way as Morales did. You just land one big athletic punch, and then it turns out that Neil Magny can't take punches anymore.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I did expect more of Prates than Morales. As I said before when we previewed it, I was like, I would pick this just on the basis of athleticism, because we've seen what just athleticism can do to Neil Magny nowadays.
Right.
But I expected more than just athleticism, and that's frankly all we really got, apart from some okay takedown defense.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to be a little more generous. I definitely share your reservations about Prates. I think at this point, if you come into a fight with Neil Magny looking even remotely unprepared for like the things Magny likes to do, that's not a great sign. He is, as I said, he should be you don't have to watch fights as closely and as obsessively as we do to have Neil Magny sort of figured out at this point. There's enough material to look at.
Yes, this is Daniel Cormier and Body Shots level of
almost beyond. I mean,
study.
like, who has been fighting at this point longer and fought more high level opponents than Neil Magny in the UFC? He's got to be close to the all time UFC fight record.
Yep.
He's been around forever. But I'm inclined to be a little more forgiving, a little more generous to Prates, because I think he was probably surprised at how aggressive Magny was.
Yeah, that's fair.
He probably expected there to be a feeling out process, which there really wasn't. Magny went in there and almost immediately jabbed his way in and snatched up a single and was trying to impose his wrestling in a way that he typically does not.
Never,
really. Right?
I can't remember him literally ever doing that.
Yeah. So it was an uncharacteristically aggressive and pointed approach from Neil Magny. I think Prates he definitely showed that he could shut down all the wrestling attacks. He didn't get taken down. He didn't get controlled, aside from the fact that he was sort of stuck in stalemate positions. But he certainly thwarted the actual progression of Magny's wrestling game past the entry. So that I think is a pretty good sign in and of itself. And then I think he did sort of figure out what the game was about halfway through that round. He broke a clinch and suddenly he just realized he was going to have to get more aggressive himself. There was going to be no feeling out phase. And once he flipped that switch, he hit Magny with a couple devastating low kicks, and then he started cornering him and just lighting him up with punches. Like, immediately, once he got aggressive, the fight was over.
Mm-hmm.
And it was over because of him doing a lot of the things that we do know work against Neil Magny. So
it was mostly over because he clipped him once, and then Neil Magny was immediately
but he started clipping him
horrifically badly hurt.
He started clipping him after chopping Neil with a big inside low kick, which instantly changed Magny's mind about how aggressive he wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fight turned, and then he started clipping him. I think it looked to me like a performance where definitely Prates did not take Magny very seriously and came in very relaxed. And that certainly could be a bad sign. But given that it was such a assertive showing for Magny, I'm willing to give him a little pass on that.
Yeah.
Cautionary notes to keep in mind, certainly, but I don't think it was necessarily a bad performance from Prates. I think it was just one where he kind of had to figure out that the fight was going to play out a little differently than he expected.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And more than that, I think it is worth like looking at the welterweight division actually now feels somewhat exciting for the first time.
Yeah.
In what feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Now that as always happens in this division, the old guys are probably going to cling on to relevance for dear life because that's what the generation before them did.
Yep.
And not fight anyone who's younger. But, now we've got Shavkat, we've got Della Maddalena, we've got Gary, we've got Buckley, we've got Morales, we've got Prates. Like, there's genuine, exciting new blood at welterweight.
And since you mentioned Gary, may I say, I was thinking of Gary's fight with Neil Magny during this.
Mm-hmm.
And that also gave me a better impression of Prates because one thing, Prates in many ways has a much simpler game than Magny or than Gary.
Mm-hmm.
As a striker. There's a lot less stuff he really wants to do. But I think he also showed that he has a better natural feel for how to mold that small selection of tools to the needs of the fight and the position in front of him. Because when he and Gary...
Sure, I think Prates being a much better athlete than Gary is not in question at this time.
Yeah, but in this specific way that Gary had Magny exactly where he wanted him for almost the entirety of their fight.
Mm-hmm.
And what he could not figure out, and this was one of the most frustrating things about it, was how to anticipate Magny's desperate defense in order to finish him. You got the guy, he can't move, his back is to the fence, and you're trying to line him up for the left hand, and he keeps ducking under it. What do you do? And for Prates, he was like, what if I throw the left hand down so he ducks into it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This is something, yes, the athleticism is perhaps why he was able to make that change so quickly, but I don't think
and why just like slightly clipping.
Yeah, that it was so
Magny
effective.
On the side of his head instantly face planted him.
But it was genuinely a struggle for Ian Gary to figure out how to, it was a fight that made Gary look a little bit like Darren Till.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like he's got the timing, but all he's doing is reacting to it defensively. So like, yes, he is anticipating what you're doing, but he's not posing any threats. You still have him right where you want him. All you have to do is use the fact that he is gonna bite, he is going to react, and exploit his reaction. That's all you have to do. You have him by the nose. So he's gonna duck, let him duck into something. Gary couldn't figure that out. Prates figured it out almost immediately.
Yeah, that is fair.
It says something good about him.
Yeah. Also, did you see that there were some people who were just like, this is a fixed fight?
What?
Because of how weird it was that, the way that Magny fell down.
You mean the fact that he fucking face planted after getting nailed on the temple?
Well, they were like, he hasn't been hit.
Yeah.
Except that, you can see it in slow motion and he has. But also, I find that
that theory doesn't really hold up to even the suggestion of scrutiny.
Yeah. But also, the thing I find funny is like people who say this stuff about like weird KOs in MMA,
yeah,
and so on. It's always funniest in MMA because you're like, I mean, I'm not saying that like weird throwing of fights and so on for money doesn't happen, because it obviously does.
Of course it does.
But why would it happen like that in MMA?
Yeah.
In MMA specifically, it's not like boxing. You don't have to take a dive because you think you've been KO'd by one punch, because you're pretending that you've been KO'd by one punch or whatever. You could just get submitted.
Right. Go down and get rear naked choked. No one will question
or
that.
You can just get TKO'd by ground and pound. It will still be recorded in the same way. Like,
yeah, cover up and just take shots on the guard.
Yeah, there's like the lack of thought in this particular case is just like,
yeah,
sure, yeah, I've seen that looks weird to me. Maybe it's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah, it sort of recalled, I'm trying to remember the fight. It was an Andrei Arlovsky fight. I think it might have been when Arlovsky fought Paul Buentello for the heavyweight title. And he hit him with a shot that nobody, except I think Big John was the ref. And he was the only one who saw the shot. Commentators didn't see it. Certainly everybody watching was like, what the fuck happened? The fight's over in 15 seconds. And only on slow-mo did you see that Arlovsky clipped Buentello with a shot on the temple. And it looked like he went down going for like a takedown, but he actually just face planted.
Yep.
It does happen, folks. When a massive Prates' hands are as big as Neil Magny's head.
Yep.
Doesn't take a particularly clean shot, especially if it's on the temple, to badly hurt somebody. Especially not a 38-year-old Neil Magny.
Yep. Who's one fight away from also getting brutally KO'd.
Yeah,
was he KO'd by Morales? He was, wasn't
he? He was, yeah. Spinning elbow and something else, and I think it was an actual KO, wasn't it? I have to check.
It wasn't It wasn't a submission after he got knocked down or anything like that.
It's a TKO. He got hurt and then pounded out.
Yeah. Grim, but yes.
Very silly one to point the finger at, folks. Pick better targets.
But yes, Prates, very exciting. Welterweight, finally genuinely looking like it has a chance of being exciting, which is obviously me cursing it so that we just get somehow the return of Colby Covington.
I'm ready for the return of Colby Covington. Based on how shitty he's been looking, bring him back. Make him fight. Shit, make him fight Rachmanov. Do it.
Oh, did you not see? He said he was like there was some article that came up where it was like Colby Covington says that he was going to fight Rachmanov or whatever, and I looked at it and I was like, really? And I looked at it and it was Colby Covington saying, "Oh yeah, they didn't call me with that Rachmanov fight. I really would have taken it because I'd love to fight someone like that." What are you talking? That is just not true.
That's him calling out Rachmanov. Oh, it's a shame I didn't get that one. Oh well.
Yeah, that was really. One of two things happened. Either they did offer it to Covington and he was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Get out of here." Or they were like, "Let's not even waste our time asking Colby Covington if he is going to accept this fight."
Damn it. A potential third option. The email went to his spam folder. Oh shit. I really would have replied. I didn't even see it. Fuck.
Oh. I so wanted to fight that Shavkat guy.
Yeah, who doesn't?
I guess I'm just going to have to keep calling out Dustin Poirier.
But yeah, Prates part of a changing and exciting welterweight landscape. No denying that.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him again.
Yeah, me too. And so is Zane. Are you aware of this, by the way, just before we close out?
I have heard Zane loves him more than anything he's ever loved before.
Yeah,
right?
Which is really weird because he is a fighting nerd.
Yeah.
Zane has a very complicated relationship with this team because he loves Prates.
Yeah, that is really bizarre.
Right? There's a psychoanalyst could get a lot of information out of Zane Simon's relationship with the fighting nerds.
It's like it's like one of those racists who just can't stop talking about, like the sexual traits of the other of the race that they're talking about.
Yeah, they're going to break into my home and beat me to death with their impressive penises.
Yeah,
you're like, something's going on here. You don't just hate these people.
I hate these guys so much. From that one guy who's just the coolest guy in the world.
Oh, they're going to take over and make me suck them off. We can't let it happen. But maybe there's no stopping it. Something's going on with this Zane character and these so-called fighting nerds. That's all we're saying. All right. I think that's it. We will be back next week to discuss whatever goofy shit happens between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. And once that is done, we will be, just 1 week removed from, I gotta say, a much better looking main card. Petr Yan, Davis, and Figueiredo.
Wow.
Yan Xiaonan, Tabatha Ricci, don't hate it. Song Kenan, Muslim Salikov, I don't hate that.
Fine.
Wong Kong, or possibly Wong Tong, I'm not sure. I think the UFC commentators have misled us on how to pronounce that one. She's making her return. And we also have Özdemir versus Carlos Ulberg, which I think is actually a pretty quality light heavyweight fight.
Yeah, it's decent.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that, maybe sneaking in a bonus episode, which reminds me, Sumo is just about to start or has just started. Miguel Class will be joining me, I guess, next week. Later next week for the first installment of the November series of Heavy Henka, our sumo analysis and discussion show. So if you want to watch the fascinating and alien and thrilling sport of sumo with us, and you never have before, now's a great time. You get to watch 15 days straight of big fat men slapping each other in the face. It's so much better than you think it is. And you should join us on this latest installment over there on the Heavy Hands Patreon. And find us on Twitter at Greg Jackson. That's Phil at Boxing Bush. That's me. And we'll be back next week for all these other fights. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.